Hello and welcome to this News 9 special. One of the biggest aspects of the war in Israel is the continuing strikes that have been happening on the part of the IDF when it comes to targeting the Hamas leadership. It is being said that the IDF is continuing to strike several locations within the Gaza Strip that is associated with none other than the important Gaza leaders who are said to have behind the massacre that happened in southern Israel. IDF did go ahead and carry out with most of the strikes in that region, and it is being said that when it comes to the strikes, the IDF has deployed its latest weaponry when it comes to targeting the sectors within Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip. From the Hamas-ruled Gaza Strip, and we have rockets coming in from the Gaza Strip that is being intercepted by the Israelis' Iron Dome shield. Now, the Iron Dome shield is a specific weapon system that is used for air defense. It tends to target multiple targets coming into a certain territory, which it's been defined by its radar. It picks up the radar signatures and immediately locks on to neutralize the target. Iron Dome had worked efficiently last time when a series of attacks came in from Gaza, and this time too, Iron Dome is said to have, in fact, been able to shield many of the areas in Israel, but though there have been breaches that have been reported in several areas. More rockets were fired from the Gaza Strip, but Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system managed to intercept them. This marks the fifth day of the ongoing strikes and the rockets exchanges between Israel and Hamas following the unprecedented attack by the Palestinian organization Hamas on southern Israel, which was a kind of an invasion from that particular land strip which Hamas controls. Hamas has said that it would take extreme actions, and the invasion had resulted in several horrors being also unrevealed from that particular location in southern Israel. Well, a plume of smoke was seen rising from the Gaza port section as fire broke out after Israeli strikes. Israel kept pounding Hamas targets in Gaza, where entire districts have been reduced to rubble. Soldiers from the IDF are said to have in fact found victims almost 6 days after the Islamist militants, the Hamas terrorists, had in fact gone ahead and carried out onslaughts on its southern towns. This is a visual coming in from the Gaza Strip, where a huge plume of smoke was seen billowing from the region, especially after the airstrike against that particular location. And you can see the impact of Israel's airstrikes in selected areas of the Gaza neighborhood. And the Gaza port is said to have in fact suffered a huge set of destruction, especially when it came to Israel using heavy weaponry and also the usage of heavy bombs to neutralize targets at the Gaza port. These are visuals coming in after the airstrike in the Gaza port region. Israel has kept pounding the Hamas targets in Gaza, and entire neighborhoods have been reduced to rubble in these areas. These are the images that show the kind of weaponry used, and at the same time you can see the burning embers of leftover military ammunition after the attack on that particular region. So it is becoming quite critical for the residents of the Gaza region, as well as Israel continues to pound Gaza, especially in an effort to neutralize Hamas targets within the Gaza Strip. Hamas targets in which Israel records is that those areas that had been used for carrying out attacks against Israel and those which are used as hideouts for the Hamas leadership as well. Israel had declared war against Hamas and had gone ahead and mobilized its reservists at a huge number, and it is being said to be one of the biggest reservist mobilizations since the Yom Kippur War in the 1970s. Israeli airstrikes in fact hit port areas in Gaza, and Israel continues to pound Hamas targets in the Palestinian enclave. This is 6 days after the Islamist militants and terrorists had launched an land, air and sea attack on southern Israel. These visuals in fact to show you the attacks from several areas from the Gaza area, and you can see the kind of damage it has in fact caused. Destruction that is there at the Gaza port area. Now, IDF releases video of the strikes and thwarting of the terrorists identified at the sea. It is being said that in many places it is through the port area where it is suspected that some of the ammunition that the Hamas had sourced and also weapons had sourced had come in through the Gaza port. So Israeli forces in fact going ahead and neutralizing the possibility of those weapons supply chains at the Gaza port, and also targeting the possible launch sites in that area. Meanwhile, the IDF has released videos of strikes and thwarting of the terrorists who were identified in the sea. It is being said that the IDF has recorded from its cameras on how they neutralize some of those threats coming in from the sea. Remember, as the Hamas terrorists carried out their strike on southern Israel, it was not only a kind of a ground invasion from the Hamas region by the terrorists, but they also came through the sea, and it was quite a shock for the Israeli defense forces as well, as they were not expecting something like this, and they have recorded the kind of encounters that they had with the Hamas militants at sea. It is being said that fast-moving crafts on the sea was in fact used to move towards the Israeli coast, close to some of the southern Israeli regions and settlements. Now, this has also come under scrutiny as to whether the Israeli coastal forces did respond immediately, and it is also being said that their response is also being scrutinized at the same time. There has been an overwhelming attack that was carried out by Hamas on southern Israel borders, especially on Shabbat. Shabbat is the holy day for Israel, and it is considered to be a day of prayer. And that is when the attack was carried out, and most of the Israelis were celebrating their Shabbat when the attack took place on the Israeli settlements in southern areas. And of course, one of the modes in which the Hamas terrorists landed in southern Israel was through the sea, and there was a fight with the Israeli forces who were guarding the coast of the country. In fact, the visuals show the targeted attacks on the boats that have been used, fast-moving patrol crafts being used by the forces. Meanwhile, emergency services, in fact, rushed to a site that was hit by the Israeli strike in Rafah. Civil defense vehicles and ambulances were seen rushing to that site of a building that was struck by an Israeli airstrike in Rafah. This particular region of Rafah is in southern Gaza Strip. Israel has been continuing to bombard its targets in densely populated Palestinian enclaves as well. Now, these are targeted attacks on certain buildings in these populated areas where Israel believes that Hamas, to ensure that these areas are made safe for their activities, they tend to in fact use populated areas, and therefore some of those buildings in populated areas were also brought down by Israel in its attack. There were huge reports coming in of several buildings in some of the populated neighborhoods of Gaza being brought down by the IDF strike. These are in fact visuals that show you the kind of impact of the Israeli airstrikes. It's not only with regard to the Iron Dome missile shield that was being put into place. Well, these are visuals that show the emergency responders in the Gaza Strip responding to the kind of situation that they are facing. And we have the kind of destruction that we can see after the Israeli bombing of certain locations in the Palestinian neighborhood. 2.3 million Palestinians are present in the Gaza Strip, but Israel has been selectively targeting buildings that have been used or have been associated with the Hamas commanders, who are said to be the ones who planned out that strike on southern Israel. Meanwhile, News9 reporter Sumit was on the ground reporting on the situation in another Israeli town of Sderot. Let's in fact listen into what he has to say.
और इस समय स्डेरोट में है और एक बार फिर से यहाँ पर अटैक किए गए हैं। और अगर आप देखें कि अभी फोर्सेस के साथ में मौजूद थे जहाँ पर ये अटैक किए गए हैं, और देखिए कुछ जगहों को जिनको अटैक किया गया है वहाँ पर रेजिडेंशियल भी लोग बाहर आए हैं, और अभी मोटे तौर पर इस रेजिडेंशियल एरिया को टारगेट किया गया है। फोर्सेस के साथ हम यहाँ मौजूद है, कई मल्टीपल जगहों के ऊपर ये अटैक किए गए हैं। हालांकि कहाँ पर शेल गिरा है ये एसेस करने की कोशिश की जा रही है। हम इस समय मौजूद हैं और देखिए अभी यहाँ के जो लोग हैं वो दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। देखिए सड़कों पर और ऊपर आप देखें कि लोग अपने रेजिडेंशियल एरिया पे है और वो इशारा करके हमको बता रहे हैं कि देखिए उस तरफ अटैक हुआ है। और ये स्डेरोट का वो इलाका है जहां पर रॉकेट से कई जगहों पर मल्टीपल जगहों पर अटैक हुए हैं।
In Beria, a kibbutz of about 1,200 residents, which is supposed to be around 5 kilometers away from Gaza, which housed among them at least children, is said to have been completely destroyed. Now, Israeli forces who came to the kibbutz to find out what happened to the residents of these kibbutz was in fact shocked to see the number of people whose bodies were in fact charred and piling up at that kibbutz. It's being said that at least 100 people had died in the kibbutz after the Hamas militants attacked this region, after they moved from the barricades that were put up against them in the southern borders of Israel. They've been able to breach through those barricades and border checkposts, move into this kibbutz and leave a trail of destruction. It has been said that the IDF has discovered at least 100 bodies in that area. This is the Hamas assault that was carried out on this kibbutz that we in fact see. Kibbutz is actually an Israeli settlement which consists of communities living in isolation from the modern world, but they do engage with the modern world and they try in building up large families as well, and most of them believe in social way of interaction in which they share their economic costs, and the kibbutz system has been prevalent, especially after the Holocaust. The kibbutz system has been prevalent as a community center and also as a social center in many of the southern regions of Israel as well. This is the kind of destruction that has been seen in the Be'eri kibbutz. Bodies also piling up as the Israeli forces make their way the Hamas terrorists have in fact attacked and killed at least 100 people in this region. We are yet to get the specifics of the death toll in Beiri kibbutz, but these visuals in fact show that the Hamas terrorists had in fact had the requisite weapons, and they carried out with a massacre of sorts in the Beiri kibbutz. Visuals of the destructions where homes inside the kibbutz was completely destroyed and families were in fact killed as the Hamas terrorists moved into this kibbutz. Meanwhile, in the capital of Tel Aviv, the streets are empty as residents in fact gather in small numbers to go ahead and carry out with donations to border regions. The city is quiet, and it's said that the people are quite sad at what has happened at the southern border regions of the country. Many of them, in fact, gathering in and getting the resources done, and they're getting the resources for those who require it in the southern regions. Many of them, in fact, carrying those supplies to the southern region as well. It is being said that it is an effort on the part of the residents of Tel Aviv to address the situation at the southern borders of Israel. The city wears a deserted look as Israel fights Hamas in Gaza and declares war on the Hamas leadership. These are the streets in Tel Aviv that wears a deserted look, many of them not coming out as they follow the instructions given by their government to stay indoor. It is also being said that they are gathering supplies for the soldiers who are in fact moving towards the south, and supermarkets in Tel Aviv is the only place where people have been gathering in and buying in supplies for people in the southern border regions as well as for the soldiers who are moving for a long haul fight against Hamas at Gaza, and they have been moving towards the southern region. Meanwhile, Israeli forces fired artillery cannons towards the Gaza Strip from the Israeli side of the border. Now, Israel is relentlessly pounding Hamas targets in Gaza, and it is not only with airstrikes, but they are also going ahead and pounding Gaza with shelling as well. What we understand is that artillery pieces have been moved towards the southern border regions, and there have been shellings that have been carried out along with airstrikes at the Gaza Strip. Initial experts who have been looking at the Israeli operation say that Israel is softening up the targets before a much touted ground invasion of Gaza. There are fears that Israel might go ahead with a ground invasion to flush out the remainder of the Hamas leadership as well as its military wings. It is being said that artillery as well as heavy weaponry is slowly being amassed along the Gaza border right now, and shelling has also been carried out by the Israelis at the Gaza Strip, and this is with regard to targeting the Hamas terrorists in Gaza. This is the 6th day of the battle that has happened in the Gaza Strip area, and we have these visuals coming in, dramatic visuals coming in of the shelling that is taking place at the Gaza Strip area against targets of the Hamas. In fact, let me bring you a fresh visual of the barrage of rocket attacks that have continuously been carried out from the Gaza Strip. These are in fact new visuals coming in of the barrage of rockets being fired from the Gaza area towards Israel, mostly towards the Ashkelon city. Ashkelon has been the epicenter of Hamas's attacks. There have been several rockets that were fired against Ashkelon, and Israel has kept pounding Hamas targets in Gaza. Meanwhile, Ashkelon has in fact been one of those cities in Israel where most of the trail of destruction has been reported because of the rockets that are being fired by Hamas from the Gaza Strip. Ashkelon has seen quite a few deaths as well because of the rocket fire. Meanwhile, the Iron Dome has also been activated in the Ashkelon region as well. There are several Jewish settlements in Ashkelon, and Ashkelon is very close to the Gaza border regions, and it has become a soft target for the Hamas terrorists in Gaza, and several rockets are still being fired at Ashkelon city in Israel. Israel has kept pounding Hamas targets in Gaza. Entire city blocks are being reduced to rubble in the Gaza region as well. There is a sweeping battle taking place in southern towns and Israeli villages. And as they in fact move on, there are several horror stories that are also being reported, especially on incidents that have occurred on the day of Hamas's invasion on southern Israel. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and centrist opposition leader Benny Gantz have reached an agreement to establish an emergency unity government. This new government will form a war cabinet including Netanyahu, Gantz and Defense Minister Yoav Gallant, focusing solely on the ongoing conflict with Hamas in Gaza. It remains uncertain what will happen to Netanyahu's existing government partners, mainly the far-right and ultra-Orthodox parties. Observers like former IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot and Strategic Affairs Minister Ron Dermer may play a crucial role in the unity government as well. This development comes after months of domestic political turmoil in Israel centered around the proposed reforms to the country's judiciary. Now, critics have characterized these reforms as an attempt to assert control over the judicial branch in what they've dubbed as a judicial coup. But as the Hamas involvement has come in and Hamas's attack has come in from the southern area of the country, it looks like the opposition in the country has decided to bury their differences and form a unity government with Netanyahu. In fact, there has been a crucial point of news which has become quite controversial as such, and there is a confirmation as well as an explanation coming in with regards to the IDF, which is saying that it is looking into the aspect of the news of 40 children, and including toddlers and infants being killed by the Hamas. Let's listen in.
I've heard a seasoned war correspondent who, after walking there, described it as the worst thing he has ever seen. Nothing less. And that should tell you something, how horrific the scenes were. So out of 1,000 people, Israelis who lived in this beautiful community, more than 100 were killed. And today the body bags, many body bags were evacuated from that kibbutz, including those of children and including those of babies. And we got very, very disturbing reports of that came from the ground, that there were babies that had been beheaded. And I admit it took us some time to really understand and to verify that report, and it was hard to believe that even Hamas could perform such a barbaric act.
Meanwhile, Gaza City has in fact sunk into darkness as power stations run out of fuel, and the only power station that was functioning has also run out of fuel and it is unable to supply power to the Gaza Strip. This means that the city doesn't have any electricity, which is a huge problem for the people living there. They are unable to also get out of the city, as all the points of escape have also been completely sealed on the northern side by Israel and in the southern side by Egypt. Meanwhile, there is also a response coming in from the IDF on what's happening in Gaza. Let's listen in.
The Gaza Strip is one of the densest populated areas in the world, about 20 miles from one end to the other, and about 9 miles in the widest location and less than 6 in the most narrow. What Hamas has done since they took control almost 20 years ago of the Gaza Strip is basically to build a network of tunnels from Gaza City and under Gaza City, which is the center and the biggest part of their infrastructure, all the way down to Khan Yunis and Rafah. So imagine we're looking at the Gaza Strip, but really think of the Gaza Strip as one layer for the civilians and then another layer for Hamas. And what we're doing now is that we are trying to get to that second layer.
Well, when we come to the situation in Gaza, we have seen how it has completely moved into darkness. Meanwhile, emergency services have been rushed to one of the sites where the Israeli strikes have happened. And this is said to be in Rafah. Rafah has seen continuous pounding of its cities and its neighborhoods. It has been said that the Rafah civil defense vehicles have responded to the strikes happening in that region. Meanwhile, Rafah is important because Rafah is the place where we have the Palestinians trying to cross over to Egypt. That has been completely sealed as well, and the residents of Rafah seem to be trapped with, on one side, the airstrikes and shellings happening, and on the other side, unable to leave the town and completely being surrounded with chaos. Many of the buildings have been also brought down because of the Israeli strikes. These are in fact visuals of the strike that has been carried out by the Israelis on that particular location in Rafah. Rafah crossing is the most crucial aspect for the Palestinians to move to another area, but Rafah crossing has also been completely damaged as Israel pounds the road leading out of Gaza. It bypasses Israel, and this particular region has also witnessed a heavy bombardment. Meanwhile, the Israeli artillery that was located in Sderot has fired shells towards Gaza as bulldozers demolish what is left of Sderot's police station that was destroyed at the beginning of the Hamas onslaught. Now, the Sderot police station was the place where the initial attacks took place, especially the police in Sderot were the first responders to the invasion of the Hamas terrorists into that region and into that city, and the policemen were targeted first by the Hamas terrorists, and they also targeted the police station that was there in Sderot. Meanwhile, my colleague Sumit, who's on the field in Sderot, he comes up with a report. Let's listen in.
सदरौट में यहाँ इस समय जहाँ पर अटैक हुआ है उस घर के लोगों को यहाँ से निकाला जा रहा है। देखिए, एक बुजुर्ग महिला को, सीनियर सिटीजन को यहाँ से निकाला जा रहा है। उनके पैर में भी शायद चोट लगी है, उनके पैर में भी। और देखिए, यहाँ से लोगों को हटाया जा रहा है। यहाँ पे अब से कुछ मिनटों पे जब हम यहाँ मौजूद थे तब ये अटैक हुआ। पूरे घर में आग लगी हुई है। लगातार जो फायर ब्रिगेड्स हैं वो यहाँ पर मौजूद है, वो लगातार यहाँ पर मौजूद है। आग पर काबू पाने का काम किया जा रहा है। कई जगहों पर सदरौट के अंदर इस तरीके से अटैक हुए हैं। फोर्सेज यहाँ ऑन ग्राउंड है, और लेकिन खास बात यह कि अभी भी यहाँ पर रहकर अटैक किए जा रहे हैं। और यहीं से बेहद करीब गाजा पट्टी है जहाँ पर बम्बारमेंट की जा रही थी, लेकिन उसी बीच हमास की तरफ से लगातार ये रॉकेट दागे गए। और देखिए, अब हम यहाँ पे आपको बता रहे हैं कि किस तरीके से अभी यहाँ से लोगों को यहाँ से लगाया जा रहा है। कुछ लोगों को चोटें भी आई हैं। यहाँ पर मैं आपको अपने कैमरा पर्सन के साथ चल के दिखाता हूँ कि देखिए, अभी यहाँ पर इस घर में यो जाके शेल गिरा है। और महत्वपूर्ण यह है कि ना सिर्फ यहाँ पर बल्कि देखिए वहाँ पर भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा डैमेजेस हुए हैं। और देखिए, मैं आपको लगातार सदरौट के इलाके में हूँ जहाँ पर ये अटैक हुए हैं। और देखिए लगातार अभी अगर आप देख रहे हो कि आपको नजर आएगा कि कई गाड़ियों को डैमेजेस हुए हैं, कई शेल्स जो हैं, कई रॉकेट जो है यहाँ पर आकर गिरे हैं। वो अगर आप देखिए तो आपको शेल्स के स्प्लिंटर्स जो हैं वो आपको नजर आ जाएंगे। और ये ऐसा हर दूसरी जगहों पर सेड्रॉट के इलाके में हो रहा है और मैं इस समय सेड्रॉट में ही मौजूद हूँ। देखिए इस घर को भी काफ़ी ज़्यादा नुकसान पहुँचा है और उस घर में जो अगर आप आगे देख रहे हो तब वहाँ पर लगातार उस घर में आग लगी है, जहाँ पर फायर ब्रिगेड्स की जो गाड़ियाँ हैं, जो फायर टेंडर्स, वो लगातार उस पर काबू पाने का काम कर रहे हैं। और हम आपको TV9 भारतवर्ष आपको लगातार इन इलाकों से रिपोर्ट कर रहा है जो इस समय गाज़ा पट्टी के बहुत करीब है और यहाँ पर क्या सूरत हाल है ये आपको दिखाने की कोशिश कर रहे हैं। 2 लोग थे उस घर के अंदर जिनको चोटें आई हैं, जिनको ले जाया जा रहा था, एक बुजुर्ग महिला और एक और शख्स बताया जा रहा है जिसको वहाँ से हटाया जा रहा है। और अगर आप देखें कि अभी भी वहाँ पर काबू पाने का काम लगातार चल रहा है।
Well, there's also tensions that is building out at the northern border of Israel. My colleague Manish Jha was at that location and he was giving us a report on the kind of movement of military vehicles taking place in that region.
मैं आपको बताऊं कि भले ही दुनिया की नजरें इस वक्त हमास और गाजा पट्टी पर हो, लेकिन इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर वो जगह है जो कि इस युद्ध के स्केल को बहुत बड़ा कर सकता है। और इस वक्त TV9 की टीम इजराइल लेबनान बॉर्डर के पास पहुंची हुई है और इस इलाके की जो टेरिटरी है उसको मैं पहले आपको दिखाऊं। देखिए मेरे पीछे जो आप देख रहे हैं, इस इलाके में आपको इस तरह की ऊंची ऊंची पहाड़ियां मिलेंगी और ऊंची ऊंची पहाड़ियों के बीच में मैंने 2-3 जो नोटिस किया है बात, वो ये चीज सबसे पहले हमारे कैमरा सहयोगी आपको दिखाएंगे कि इस बॉर्डर के पास जो लगातार ट्रूप्स को डिप्लॉय किया जा रहा है और टैंक को डिप्लॉय किया जा रहा है। देखिए 1 2 3 4 टैंक को यहाँ पर जो है वो व्हीकल्स पर तैनात है, जिसको आगे बढ़ाकर फिर पोजीशन पर डिप्लॉय किया जाएगा। लगातार यहाँ से दूसरे मिलिट्री व्हीकल्स को जाते हुए मैं देख रहा हूँ। और जो मैंने नोटिस किया है, यहाँ पर सैकड़ों की संख्या में मुझे सैनिकों के कार दिखाई दिए हैं, यानी कि वो लोग अपने अपने कार को पार्किंग में लगाकर और फिर अपनी पोजीशन को लिए हुए हैं। तो हाथ में हथियार है, अपनी कार से आते हैं, कार को कहीं पर लगा दे रहे हैं। और इस बॉर्डर के आसपास 35 से 40 किलोमीटर का जो एरिया है वहां पर उन्होंने अपनी सेना को तैनात कर रखा है। तो आप समझ सकते हैं कि इसका मतलब यह है कि उन्हें इस बात की आशंका है कि अगर यहां पर स्थिति बढ़ी, अगर लेबनान की तरफ से हमला हुआ, तो वैसी स्थिति में ज्यादा संभावना यह है कि अगर वो इजरायली सीमा के अंदर घुसे तो 35 किलोमीटर तक उनका सामना किया जा सके। इस तरह की तैयारी यहां इजरायल ने लेबनान बॉर्डर पर कर रखी है।
Well, members of the German parliament, the Bundestag in Berlin, observed a minute's silence in memory of the Israeli victims of the Hamas attacks. It has been said that Babel Bas, who is the president of the parliament, also announced that the Israeli ambassador to Germany, Ron Prosser, would be given a chance to speak on the kind of horror that took place in the parliament when it came to the situation in Israel. So the Germans giving their solidarity with regard to the situation in Israel.
Seine Exzellenz, Herrn Ron Prosser.
Meanwhile, a cross-section of South Africans took to the streets in Johannesburg in support of the people of Palestine as the deadly conflict between Israel and the militant group Hamas continued. Many of the groups that were associated with certain parties took to the streets with the Palestinian flags and pledged their support for Palestine. The demonstrations were organized by the pro-Palestine group BDS, which is to boycott, disinvest sanctions, which continues to call for boycott of Israeli products, disinvestments and sanctions against the country. They were held as the Jewish community in South Africa also announced plans to hold prayer sessions in solidarity events this week in support of Israel. South Africa's government has called for an immediate cessation of violence between Israel and Palestine. These are in fact the visuals coming in of the solidarity rally that's been carried out in South Africa, where a group of people have pledged their support to Palestine. The the protest was carried out by the organization BDS, which is said to be boycott, disinvest and sanctions. This is targeted against Israel and has been advocating for disinvestment of South African investments in Israel. Meanwhile, there has been a series of reactions coming in from the global leaders, many of them pledging their support for Israel and some of them cautioning Israel to stop the violence and to come onto the negotiating table.
A very simple and clear message on behalf of the President of the United States and on behalf of the American people, and that is that the United States has Israel's back. We have the back of the Israeli people. We have their back today. We'll have it tomorrow. We will have it every day. We stand resolutely against terrorism. We've seen the almost undescribable acts committed by Hamas against Israeli men, women, and children. Every day, we're learning more, and it is simply heartbreaking. Not since ISIS have we seen this kind of depravity, and we will continue to stand very resolutely against it. When I'm in Israel, I'll have the opportunity to meet with Prime Minister Netanyahu, President Herzog, other senior officials. I look forward to seeing our embassy team as well that's been doing terrific work during these difficult days. We're determined to make sure that Israel gets everything it needs to defend itself, to provide for the security of its people. Already.
You know, there are moments in this life, and I mean this literally, when the pure, unadulterated evil is unleashed on this world. The people of Israel lived through one such moment this weekend. The bloody hands of the terrorist organization Hamas, a group whose stated purpose for being is to kill Jews. This was an act of sheer evil. More than 1,000 civilians slaughtered, not just killed, slaughtered in Israel.
Terrorists like Putin or like Hamas seek to hold free and democratic nations as hostages. And they want power over those who seek freedom. The terrorists will not change. They just must lose.
France is also on the side of international law and peace, of which it is and will remain a staunch defender. Everything must be done to avoid escalation in the Middle East, to protect the civilian population and to prevent the Middle East from going up in flames. These unjustifiable terrorist attacks by Hamas must not distract us from search for a lasting peace and a political solution to the conflict.
Well, these are in fact the Iron Dome as well as the rocket attacks that are taking place in Gaza that is being highlighted. These were pre-dawn attacks on Israel from the Gaza area, and you have the Iron Dome visuals coming in where they are trying to in fact ensure that they bring in these weapons down that has been fired from the Gaza region. And here of course we can see those kind of damage that is caused in the port city of Gaza. Gaza's port area has also been completely targeted by the IDF. This is to in fact stop some of the militants from actually moving towards the sea, and also to disrupt the supply lines of the weapons that are coming through the sea. And you can see the attack has in fact destroyed certain parts of the port. We have my colleague Manish Jha, who is in the town, especially in the northern borders of Israel, and he gets us the latest from there.
शनिवार को हमास के हमले के बाद आज छठा दिन है जब इजराइल की तरफ से लगातार एयर स्ट्राइक हो रहे हैं, लेकिन इस बीच में हमास की तरफ से भी अलग अलग ठिकानों पर मिसाइल छोड़े जा रहे हैं, और उसमें से एक है ये हाइफा सिटी। हाइफा सिटी आप इस वक्त देख रहे हैं, जो कि एक पोर्ट सिटी है, बहुत बड़ा सिटी है, इजराइल के बड़े शहरों में से एक शुमार है। और यहाँ पर आप देखिए, ये सामने में आपको पोर्ट भी दिखाई दे रहा है, बहुत सारे यहाँ पर कार्गो शिप भी यहाँ पर मौजूद है। और इस वक्त की सबसे बड़ी खबर ये है कि अभी थोड़ी देर पहले ही यहाँ से कई लड़ाकू विमान इजराइल एयरफोर्स के हाइफा के आसमान से होकर गुजरे हैं, और वो संभावना है कि वो लड़ाकू विमान लेबनान बॉर्डर की तरफ गए होंगे, क्योंकि लेबनान बॉर्डर जो इजराइल का नॉर्दर्न बॉर्डर है वो यहाँ से पास में है और वहाँ से हिजबुल्लाह की चुनौती लगातार बनी हुई है। तो वैसी स्थिति में हाइफा और लेबनान बॉर्डर पर जो शहर हैं वो एक तरफ नया फ्रंट के तौर पर इजराइल के लिए बड़ी चुनौती है। लेकिन सबसे बड़ी बात यह है कि यहाँ के लोगों को ये कहा गया है कि यहाँ पर कई मिसाइल से हमले हो सकते हैं, चाहे वो हमास के मिसाइल हो या हिजबुल्लाह की मिसाइल हो। इस वक्त TV9 की टीम हाइफा शहर में मौजूद है, जहां पर यह आशंका जताई जा रही है कि हमास और हिजबुल्लाह दोनों की तरफ से रॉकेट इस शहर में दागे जा सकते हैं। एक ऐसा शहर जो इजराइल का सबसे कमर्शियल शहर है, जहां पर पोर्ट है, जहां पर उनकी सारी इंडस्ट्रियल डेवलपमेंट, इंडस्ट्रियल एक्टिविटी होती है, उस शहर को टारगेट कर सकता है हमास और हिजबुल्लाह दोनों मिलकर। और वैसी स्थिति में यहाँ पर काफ़ी अलर्ट मोड में रखा गया है सभी लोगों को और उन्हें बताया गया है कि महज 15 सेकंड के अंदर उन्हें तुरंत बंकर में चले जाना है। इससे पहले जब हमास ने 120 किलोमीटर दूरी वाली लॉन्ग रेंज मिसाइल से हमला किया था, तो संयोग की बात यह थी कि वो मिसाइल एक ऐसी जगह पर गिरा जहां कोई व्यक्ति नहीं था और इसलिए कोई डैमेज नहीं हुआ। तो इस वक्त TV9 की टीम आपको इस लोकेशन से रिपोर्ट करके बता रही है कि क्या सिचुएशन है इजराइल के हाइफा सिटी की।
Well, there are reports coming in from Haifa where there is a fear that Haifa could be targeted. Haifa is Israel's port city, and there are warnings that it could be targeted by the Hezbollah as well as the Hamas. And these are in fact visuals coming from the Gaza, the port area, where aftermath of the Israeli attack can be in fact seen over here. And as you can see, after the airstrike, the burning ammunition on the rooftops of the houses in the Gaza port city, Israel has been in fact going ahead and pounding the city quite hard, especially to knock out the remnants of the Hamas leadership in that city. Gaza has been facing the onslaught of the Israeli bombardment, especially after the Hamas leadership captured some of the southern areas of Israel and kept control of the territory for almost 2 days, after which the Israeli forces pushed them back into Gaza. Meanwhile, External Affairs Minister Jaishankar has said that India has launched Operation Ajay, and Operation Ajay is part of India's efforts to return the stranded Indians in war zone of Israel. India has around 18,000 of its citizens who are working in Israel and at various capacities. Some of them had gone there as pilgrims, and we understand that after the war had taken place, most of them were in fact stuck. So just like how India has always responded when it comes to its NRI population being stuck in war zone countries, India has now launched Operation Vijay to facilitate the return of Indians back. It's a special charter flight that will be sent to Israel, and from there they will be returning from the place. India's diplomatic staff is working on the ground 24/7, especially in Israel after the latest crisis has erupted in that region. And Jaishankar has said that India would now facilitate the return of its citizens from the war-torn country. Let's in fact listen into what the Consul General had to say when it came to the situation in Israel.
I congratulate Prime Minister Narendra Modi ji for launching Operation Ajay to bring Indian citizens back from Israel. There are around 18,000 Indian citizens in Israel, including 1,000 Indian students whom we love very much. The Indian business community that we love and respect so much contribute to our economy in a big way. Indian nurses and caregivers have become part of our families. The Israeli government is doing the utmost to assist the Indian embassy in Tel Aviv in Operation Ajay. We look forward to welcome all of you back in Israel once we win the war against Hamas, ISIS terrorists. Jai Hind, Jai Israel.
Well, that was in fact the Consul General, in fact, speaking on the kind of situation that was unfolding in Israel, and also, in fact, thanked the Israeli government, thanked the Indian government for going ahead and carrying out with its rescue operations in Israel. Of course, the Consul General saying that the Indian community has been a contributing factor to the economy of Israel and have also been model expatriates in that country, and saying that the relationship between India and Israel is in fact too deep and strong. Efforts are being carried out to bring back 18,000. India launches Operation Ajay. It was being carried out with the help of India's diplomatic corps as well. Efforts are being carried out to coordinate with the logistics in Israel as well to carry on with Operation Ajay. We have the EAM, Jaishankar, tweeting about it and saying that the Operation Ajay's intention is to ensure that the Indian expatriates in Israel are brought back home safe. Well, moving on, in a tragic incident back home, at least 4 people lost their lives while more than 70 people were left injured after 6 coaches of the Delhi-Kamakhya North East Express derailed near the Rangnathpur station in Bihar's Buxar. This incident happened on Wednesday night. The derailment happened at around 9:53 p.m. At least 2 AZ3 tire coaches had toppled over while 4 other coaches jumped the tracks. Union Railway Minister Ashwini Vaishnav stated that the government will investigate the cause of the derailment. He also announced that the rescue operations has been completed in Bihar's Buxar district. Evacuation and rescue has been completed. All coaches have been checked, is what we understand. Train to ferry passengers for onward journey has also been carried out, and it should start in a few minutes, is what Ashwini Vaishnav has in fact posted on the social media platform X. Assam Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sarma, meanwhile, has expressed grief over the train derailment. He also, in fact, went to the social media platform X and said that he was offering his heartfelt condolences to the bereaved families and was praying for the quick recovery of those who are injured. And he said a relief train has also departed from Rangnathpur for Kamakhya Junction to bring back the stranded passengers of train number 12506. Meanwhile, Bihar government announced an ex gratia of rupees 4 lakhs for the kin of those who lost their lives in this tragic incident. 50,000 gratia to be given to injured.
रात के 9:53 में यह दुर्घटना हुई है और 4 लोगों की मौत हो चुकी है और 200 से ज़्यादा लोग घायल हैं। उनको अलग अलग अस्पतालों में भर्ती कराया गया, कुछ को प्राथमिक उपचार के बाद ही छोड़ दिया गया, कुछ को अभी भी पटना रेफ़र किया गया। पटना के पीएमसीएच में, एम्स में कुछ भर्ती हैं। और बक्सर के जो स्थानीय सांसद हैं, केंद्रीय मंत्री अश्विनी चौबे भी इस वक्त यहाँ पर आए हुए हैं। लेकिन शुरू में ये कहा गया कि मात्र 6 जो डब्बे हैं वो डिरेल्ड हुए हैं, लेकिन आप देखिए पूरी की पूरी ट्रेन डिरेल्ड है। इस ट्रैक पे ये ट्रेन यहाँ पे आ रही थी और पूरी की पूरी जो ट्रेन है वो यहाँ पर डिरेल्ड हो चुकी है। और 1, 2 या 6 बगिया, हालांकि रेलवे ने भी पहले कहा था कि मात्र 6 डिब्बे ट्रैक से अलग हुए हैं। 2 डब्बे तो ऐसे हैं जो पूरी तरह से पलट गए हैं और उसी एक डब्बे से 4 लोगों की मौत भी हुई है। लेकिन ग्राउंड जीरो पर जब हम रात में पहुंचे, उस वक्त जो हमने देखा यहाँ ग्राउंड पर कि मात्र 6 डिब्बे ही नहीं बल्कि पूरी की पूरी ये जो ट्रेन है ये अपनी पूरी लंबाई में ट्रैक से उतर चुकी है और ये पूरी ट्रेन डिरेल्ड हो चुकी है। और पूरी रात यहाँ पर रेल के जो आईजी हैं वो यहाँ पर मौजूद थे, रेस्क्यू ऑपरेशन चलाया गया। हालांकि बहुत धन्यवाद देना होगा जो स्थानीय लोग हैं, और ये शुक्र इस वजह से कि जहाँ पर हादसा हुआ वहाँ दोनों तरफ आबादी है। रघुनाथपुर जो आबादी क्षेत्र है और आबादी वाले क्षेत्र में ही यह हादसा हुआ, लिहाजा लोग, प्रशासन पहुंचे, रेलवे की टीम पहुंचे, एनडीआरएफ पहुंचे, एसडीआरएफ पहुंचे, उसके पहले जो स्थानीय लोग हैं वो पहुंचे और उन्होंने घायलों को ना सिर्फ निकाला बल्कि जो अगर कुछ ऐसे लोग जिनको त्वरित इलाज नहीं मिलता तो शायद ये घटना और बड़ी हो सकती थी, कैजुअल्टी वो संख्या बढ़ सकती है। लेकिन ये घटना दृश्यों में जितनी बड़ी दिख रही है कि पूरी की पूरी ट्रेन डिरेल्ड हो जाए, कुछ बोगियां पूरी तरह से पलट जाएं, कुछ बोगियां गड्ढे में चली जाएं। आपको मैं दिखलाता हूं कि किस तरह से गड्ढे में कुछ डब्बे जो हैं वो चले गए हैं। ट्रैक पूरी तरह से उखड़ चुका है और यहाँ सामने मैं आपको दिखलाता हूं कि किस तरह से, और ये जो दृश्यों की जो भयावहता है वो शुक्र है कि कैजुअल्टी उतनी नहीं है, वरना आप यहाँ ज़रा देखिए किस तरह से ये डब्बे कहाँ चले गए हैं। कोई गड्ढे में जाकर के गिरा है, कोई उधर आबादी से सिर्फ सटा हुआ जो मकान है उस तरफ चला गया है, और दूसरी तरफ आपको अगर दिखलाएं, आपके पास वक्त हो, कि किस तरह से एक बॉगी किस तरह से पूरी तरह से पलटकर और उसके जो पहिए हैं वो ऊपर की तरफ हो गए हैं।
Well, that's all in this edition of the Bulletin, but stay tuned to News 9 as we give you continuous coverage of what's happening in Israel.
Literally